Hey guys, Sausage here. Have you ever wanted to play Doom, but rather than killing demons, you're killing Lovecraftian monsters beyond human comprehension? Developed by Bite Barrel, Forgive Me Father was released on April 7th, 2022 onto Steam, GOG, Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo Switch. Currently, Forgive Me Father has recent Steam reviews and all reviews sitting at 78% and 85% ratings, respectively. The story starts off with you returning to a town called Pestisville to your cousin, Lewis Martin. Lewis is investigating a new cult in town, but by the time you arrive, Lewis is missing and the cult has taken over. The story progresses as you play, but the issue here is that most of the story is hidden away in items scattered across the levels that are labeled story. This wouldn't be a big issue, but not all of these story items are easy to find, and even when you do find them, they're mostly about prior events, some of which being about characters you never actually meet. You do get some of the story handed to you without needing to hunt it down, such as one of the mayoral candidates, Benjamin Mahoney, being... Wait, Benjamin who? Mahoney? Is that my grandpa? Anyway, Benjamin Mahoney being a mayoral candidate is one of the minor antagonists of the game. Shocker, who would have thought money and power could corrupt someone? It is possible to find the whole story online, however, even then, it's just piecing together characters and events that you don't actually get to experience. The game starts with you in Pestisville being attacked by other humans, with your first two weapons being a knife and a revolver. As you play, you explore more and more levels while collecting more and more weapons, unlocking different abilities, and taking on more and more monsters beyond your feeble and weak human mind's comprehension. Not only this, but there is an upgrade tree as well. Most of the upgrades are for your weapons and the different abilities you acquire, with some of the perks being dual pistols, a brighter lamp, and full auto weapons. I started off maxing out the experience branch so that I could acquire extra XP in the later levels, a brighter lamp so I could see farther in the dark, and then anything that granted me extra health. After that, I focused on upgrades for the weapons I liked until I was purchasing upgrades at the end just because I had the points to spend. Towards the end of the game, certain areas caused me bits of frustration here and there in which I would turn the game off and come back to it later. Not only were some of these areas much more difficult than usual, which added a bit of challenge I was not expecting, but there was one area that stands out to me most in terms of frustration. I was required to fight my way through a maze in complete darkness, aside from my lamp, and it took me a good 5 to 10 minutes to complete. After making it to the end, I found a key for which I could use to open a door, as keys do. Upon grabbing the key, the lights turned on and intense music started playing, informing me that there were monsters spawning. I started blasting these enemies as I made my way back to the entrance of the maze, only to find out about halfway through that the ceiling was dropping and the ceiling had spikes on it. Unfortunately, by this time it was too late. I was unable to make it out of the maze. After respawning, I discovered I was back outside of this maze and I had to redo the entire thing. Ultimately, it's not a big deal, but that is still 5 to 10 minutes of my life I'm not getting back, all because I had no idea spikes were falling from the ceiling because I was too focused on killing enemies. What the game should have done was have it autosave just before I picked up the key so that I didn't have to redo the entire first half of the maze. It was little nuances like these that really annoyed me occasionally, however, these are small complaints for a game that had overall incredible gameplay. The soundtrack is an absolute banger. When you think of Doom, there are usually 3 things people think of: demons, gratuitous violence, and metal music. The soundtrack in Forgive Me Father could go toe-to-toe with any Doom soundtrack, especially in the later levels when you're fighting hordes of monsters. Hearing that fast-paced metal music, it makes me feel like a shotgun because I instantly become pumped and I'm ready to blast these monsters point blank. The music? Chef's kiss. The art isn't necessarily my favorite, but it is still good. The entire game looks like a comic book, and not only that, but each character model and each level are uniquely their own. There are Cthulhu heads with tentacles, wings, and long lanky arms and legs. There are monsters that pretend to be exploding barrels which will spawn arms and legs if you get too close and then chase after you. You have monsters that look like World War I soldiers ready for chemical warfare with gas masks and trench coats, but if you look closely, they have tentacles growing out of their faces. As for the levels, you have a cemetery, you have a campground, a farm, a science lab, a ship, and even one level that is completely underwater with your only weapon being a harpoon. Not once did I enter a level and think to myself, man, this is ugly and I'm tired of looking at it. This game has so much more life and character than I was expecting. As for the price, it's just a little steep. However, I do think it is justified. Currently, Forgive Me Father is sitting at $20 on Steam. I played the campaign on the priest character and it took me about 8 hours. With that said though, that was just normal difficulty, so there are harder difficulties if you choose to play them. Not only that, but there is a second character you can replay the game on with different abilities and a slightly different story. There is also an endless mode, which, as self-explanatory as it is just a mode where you choose a level, set the parameters of the difficulty, and then play until you lose. Lastly, there is a New Game Plus mode where you get to choose all of the beginning settings like you did before starting the game, but this time you can also choose how many skills and skill points you start with. Do you want to start the game with a fully upgraded lamp, dual-wield pistols, and completely upgraded health? You can do that. While I know not all of these things are everyone's cup of tea, the fact that you can replay this on a different character, play endless mode, and play a New Game Plus all for $20, and the base normal difficulty of the game took me about 8 hours, $20 really is a fantastic price for all that you're able to do if you so choose to. With that out of the way, I give this game a rating of 8.4 sausages out of 10. There is a story to the game, but it takes a backseat to everything else. You can piece it together as you play, but even then, most of the story is backstory rather than what is actively happening. The gameplay is great. As you play, you unlock various weapons, abilities, and gain skill points to upgrade your different weapons and abilities. My only slight complaint is that in the endgame there are certain encounters that cause moments of frustration that were severe enough to make me want to turn the game off and retry later. Ultimately, I was able to beat the game of course, but in those moments, I was just sort of fed up for the time being. The soundtrack is this game's greatest strength. If you told me this was a Doom soundtrack, I would have completely believed you, and imitation is the purest form of flattery. If I can't tell the difference between this soundtrack and Doom's, it means they're doing something right. The art is great as well, with the entire thing looking like a comic book. Not to mention, every model and every level is unique and has its own special vibe. The price might be a little steep for some, but for anyone who wishes to replay it, the price is completely justified. $20 for 8 hours of gameplay on just normal difficulty on just one character? There is a second character with different abilities and a slightly different story, not to mention harder difficulties as well. Also, there is a New Game Plus mode and an Endless mode, which can add many more hours to your game as well. And that's my review of Forgive Me Father. If you enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, so consider following me on that platform as well. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out.